The wind howled through the trees, carrying with it a biting cold that seemed to pierce through even the thickest of fur. The forest was a vast, white expanse, blanketed in snow that sparkled under the pale light of the winter moon. It was a place of beauty, but also of danger, the kind of place where only the strongest could survive. Deep within this frozen wilderness, a lone figure moved with purpose. Her name was Elara, a huntress known far and wide for her unmatched skill and unyielding courage. She was a woman of the wild, her life intertwined with the rhythms of nature. Her long, dark hair was tied back in a braid, and her piercing green eyes scanned the landscape with a hunter's precision. She wore a cloak made from the fur of a wolf she had slain years ago, its warmth a constant reminder of her resilience. Elara had been tracking a pack of wolves for days, following their faint tracks in the snow. The wolves had been terrorizing the nearby villages, taking livestock and even threatening the people. She had vowed to put an end to their reign of terror. But as she ventured deeper into the forest, she began to sense that something was amiss. The forest was too quiet. The usual sounds of life, the chirping of birds, the rustling of small animals in the underbrush, were absent. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Elara's instinct screamed at her to turn back, but she pressed on, driven by a sense of duty and a curiosity that she couldn't quite shake. As she moved through the trees, she noticed something unusual, a set of tracks that didn't belong to any animal she had ever seen. They were large, with deep imprints that suggested a creature of considerable size. But what really caught her attention was the way the tracks seemed to lead deeper into the forest, towards a place that even the bravest hunters avoided: the Frozen Heart. It was a place of legend, a part of the forest that was said to be cursed. Those who ventured there never returned, their bodies never found. But Elara was not one to be deterred by superstition. She had faced danger before and emerged victorious. She would not be scared off by stories. As she followed the tracks, the forest grew darker, the trees thicker. The snow beneath her feet became harder, more compact, as if it had been frozen for centuries. The air grew colder, and Elara pulled her cloak tighter around her, her breath visible in the frigid air. And then she saw it, a clearing in the forest, where the trees seemed to part as if by some unseen force. In the center of the clearing was a sight that made Elara's heart skip a beat. 3 bear cubs, huddled together for warmth, their fur matted with snow. They were shivering, their small bodies trembling from the cold. But what really struck Elara was the look in their eyes, a look of fear, but also of hope. Elara's heart ached for the cubs. She knew that they wouldn't survive long in this frozen wasteland. But as she approached them, she noticed something else. The track she had been following led right to the cubs. And they weren't alone. From the shadows of the trees, a pair of glowing eyes emerged, followed by another and another. Wolves. But these were no ordinary wolves. They were larger, their fur a ghostly white that blended seamlessly with the snow. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and their teeth were bared in snarls that sent chills down Elara's spine. The wolves circled the clearing, their movements slow and deliberate, as if they were savoring the moment. Elara knew that she was outnumbered, but she also knew that she couldn't leave the cubs to their fate. She drew her bow, her fingers knocking an arrow with practiced ease. The wolves lunged. The first wolf came at her with a speed that belied its size, its jaws snapping at the air as it closed the distance between them. Elara's arrow flew true, striking the beast in the chest and sending it tumbling to the ground. But there was no time to celebrate. The other wolves were already upon her. Elara moved with the grace of a predator, her bow singing as she loosed arrow after arrow. Each shot found its mark. But the wolves kept coming, their numbers seemingly endless. She could feel the strain in her muscles, the cold air burning her lungs as she fought to keep the wolves at bay. The cubs huddled together, their eyes wide with fear as they watched the battle unfold. Elara knew that she couldn't keep this up forever. She needed to find a way to protect the cubs and escape the clearing. But the wolves were relentless, their attacks coming faster and faster. With a cry of determination, Elara dropped her bow and drew her hunting knife. The blade gleamed in the pale light, and she met the next wolf head-on, her knife slicing through its throat with a swift, precise motion. The wolf fell, its blood staining the snow, but another was already taking its place. Elara's mind raced as she fought, her thoughts a whirlwind of strategy and instinct. She needed to find a way to turn the tide, to give herself and the cubs a chance to escape. And then she saw it, a fallen tree, its trunk hollowed out by time and weather. It was just big enough to provide shelter for the cubs, if she could get them there. With a burst of energy, Elara lunged towards the cubs, her knife flashing as she cut down another wolf. She grabbed the first cub, its small body trembling in her arms, and sprinted towards the tree. The wolves were hot on her heels, their snarls filling the air as they closed in. Elara shoved the cub into the hollow of the tree, then turned to face the wolves. She knew that she couldn't hold them off for long, but she only needed to buy enough time to get the other cubs to safety. She fought with everything she had, her knife a blur as she cut down wolf after wolf. But the wolves were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. Elara could feel her strength waning, her movements slowing as the cold and exhaustion took their toll. She knew that she was running out of time. And then, just as she thought she couldn't go on, a sound echoed through the forest, a deep, resonant roar that seemed to shake the very ground beneath her feet. The wolves froze, their ears twitching as they turned towards the source of the sound. Elara's heart pounded in her chest as she saw a massive figure emerge from the trees. It was a bear, but unlike any bear she had ever seen. Its fur was a deep, midnight black, and its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. It moved with a grace that belied its size, its powerful muscles rippling beneath its fur as it approached the clearing. The wolves hesitated, their snarls fading into low growls as they backed away from the bear. Elara could feel the tension in the air, the sense of impending danger as the two predators faced off. And then, with a roar that seemed to shake the very heavens, the bear charged. The bear's charge was a force of nature, a primal display of power that sent the wolves scattering in all directions. Its massive paws slammed into the snow, sending up plumes of white powder as it barreled towards the nearest wolf. The wolf barely had time to react before the bear's jaws closed around its throat, ending its life in an instant. Elara watched in awe as the bear tore through the pack of wolves with a ferocity that was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. It moved with a speed and precision that defied its size, its powerful limbs striking out with deadly accuracy. The wolves, for all their numbers, were no match for the bear's sheer strength and determination. But even as the bear fought, Elara knew that it couldn't last forever. The wolves were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. She needed to find a way to help, to turn the tide in their favor. With a deep breath, Elara gripped her knife and charged into the fray. She moved with the grace of a predator, her blade flashing as she cut down wolf after wolf. The bear seemed to sense her presence, its glowing eyes meeting hers for a brief moment before it returned to the fight. Together, they were a force to be reckoned with. The bear's raw power and Elara's skill with the blade made them an unstoppable team, and the wolves began to fall back, their snarls fading into whimpers as they realized that they were outmatched. But even as the wolves retreated, Elara knew that the danger was far from over. The bear was wounded, its fur matted with blood from the countless bites and scratches it had endured. And the cubs were still huddled in the hollow of the tree, their small bodies trembling with fear. Elara approached the bear cautiously, her knife still in hand. She could see the pain in its eyes, the way its massive chest heaved with each labored breath. But there was also something else, a sense of gratitude, of recognition. The bear let out a low growl, its eyes locking onto Elara's. For a moment, she felt a connection, a bond that transcended words. It was as if the bear was thanking her, acknowledging her bravery and her willingness to risk her life for the cubs. And then, with a final, shuddering breath, the bear collapsed onto the snow, its massive body going still. Elara's heart ached as she looked down at the bear, her mind racing with questions. Who was this bear? Why had it come to their aid? And what would happen to the cubs now that their protector was gone? She knew that she couldn't leave them here, not in this frozen wasteland. They needed her, just as she had needed the bear's help to survive. With a heavy heart, Elara turned to the cubs, her resolve hardening. She would protect them, no matter what it took. She would be their guardian, just as the bear had been. But as she gathered the cubs in her arms, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The forest held many secrets, and she had only just begun to uncover them. The forest was silent as Elara made her way through the snow. The cubs nestled securely in her arms. The bear's body lay behind her, a solemn reminder of the battle they had fought and the sacrifice that had been made. She knew that she couldn't stay here, not with the wolves still lurking in the shadows. She needed to find a safe place for the cubs, a place where they could grow and thrive. But as she walked, Elara couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The forest seemed to close in around her, the trees towering overhead like silent sentinels. The snow crunched beneath her feet, the sound echoing through the stillness like a drumbeat. The cubs were quiet, their small bodies warm against her chest. They seemed to sense the danger, their eyes wide with fear as they clung to her. Elara whispered soothing words to them, her voice soft and reassuring. She knew that they were scared, but she also knew that they were strong. They had survived this long, and with her help, they would continue to survive. As she walked, Elara's mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead. She needed to find shelter, a place where they could rest and recover. But more than that, she needed to find answers. Who was the bear that had saved them? Why had it come to their aid? And what was the true nature of the frozen heart? The forest seemed to hold its breath as she moved deeper into its heart, the snow growing thicker with each step. The air was colder here, the wind biting at her skin like 1,000 tiny knives. But Elara pressed on, her determination unwavering. And then, just as she thought she couldn't go any further, she saw it, a cave hidden behind a curtain of icicles. It was small, but it would provide shelter from the cold and the wolves. Elara approached cautiously, her eyes scanning the area for any signs of danger. The cave was empty, its walls smooth and cold to the touch. Elara set the cubs down gently, her hands trembling with exhaustion. She needed to rest, to gather her strength for the journey ahead. But she also knew that she couldn't let her guard down, not even for a moment. As she settled into the cave, Elara's mind wandered back to the bear. She had seen many things in her life, but nothing like this. The bear had been more than just an animal. It had been a guardian, a protector. And now, it was gone. But as she looked at the cubs, she knew that its spirit lived on. They were its legacy, its hope for the future. And she would do everything in her power to ensure that they survived. With a deep breath, Elara closed her eyes, her mind drifting into a restless sleep. The forest was quiet, but she knew that the silence was only temporary. The wolves were still out there, and they would not rest until they had their revenge. But Elara was ready. She had faced danger before, and she would face it again. For the cubs, for the bear, and for herself, she would fight. Elara awoke to the sound of the cubs stirring, their small bodies wriggling as they tried to find a comfortable position. The cave was cold, but the cubs' warmth had kept her from freezing during the night. She stretched, her muscles aching from the previous day's battle, and looked around the cave. The cubs were awake, their eyes bright with curiosity as they explored their new surroundings. Elara smiled, her heart swelling with affection for the little creatures. They were so innocent, so full of life, and she knew that she would do anything to protect them. But as she looked at them, she also knew that she couldn't keep them in the cave forever. They needed food, and she needed to find a way to get them to safety. The forest was vast, and she had no idea where to go. But she knew that she couldn't stay here. With a sigh, Elara gathered the cubs in her arms and stepped out of the cave. The forest was still, the snow-covered trees glistening in the early morning light. The air was crisp, and Elara took a deep breath, savoring the freshness of the new day. As she walked, Elara's mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead. She needed to find a way out of the forest, but she also needed to find answers. The bear had been a mystery, and she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this forest than met the eye. And then, as if in answer to her thoughts, she saw it, a trail, faint but unmistakable, leading through the trees. It was a path, one that had been used by someone or something. Elara's heart leapt with hope. If there was a path, then there must be people nearby. She followed the trail, her steps quickening as she moved through the forest. The cubs were quiet, their eyes wide with curiosity as they looked around. Elara could feel the tension in the air, the sense that they were being watched. But she pressed on, her determination unwavering. And then, just as she thought she couldn't go any further, she saw it, a village, hidden deep within the forest. It was small, with only a handful of huts clustered together, but it was a sight that filled Elara with relief. The village was quiet, the only sound the crunch of snow beneath her feet as she approached. The huts were made of wood and stone, their roofs covered with a thick layer of snow. Smoke curled from the chimneys, a sign that the village was inhabited. Elara's heart pounded as she approached the nearest hut, her hand raised to knock on the door. But before she could, the door swung open, revealing an old woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. "Welcome, traveler," the woman said, her voice soft and soothing. "You look like you've been through quite an ordeal. Come in and rest." Elara hesitated, her eyes scanning the woman's face for any sign of deceit. But all she saw was kindness, and she knew that she had found a safe haven. With a nod, Elara stepped inside, the cubs nestled securely in her arms. The hut was warm, the fire crackling in the hearth casting a golden glow over the room. The old woman gestured for Elara to sit, and she did, her body sinking into the soft cushions of the chair. The woman brought her a bowl of stew, the smell of herbs and spices filling the air. Elara ate hungrily, the warmth of the food spreading through her body. The cubs watched her with wide eyes, their small noses twitching as they sniffed the air. As she ate, Elara told the woman her story, from the battle with the wolves to the bear's sacrifice. The woman listened intently, her eyes filled with compassion. "You have been through much," the woman said when Elara had finished. "But you are not alone. This village is a place of refuge, a sanctuary for those who seek it. You and the cubs are welcome here." Elara felt a wave of relief wash over her, but she also knew that her journey was far from over. The forest held many secrets, and she had only just begun to uncover them. But for now, she was safe, and that was enough. The warmth of the hut was a stark contrast to the biting cold of the forest outside. Elara sat by the fire, the cubs curled up at her feet, their small bodies rising and falling with each breath. The old woman, who introduced herself as Melis, moved about the hut with a quiet grace, preparing a second bowl of stew for the cubs. "You must be exhausted," Melis said, her voice soft and soothing. "Rest now. You are safe here." Elara nodded, her eyes heavy with fatigue. But despite her exhaustion, her mind was racing. The village was a mystery, hidden deep within the forest, and she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it than met the eye. "Thank you," Elara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I need to know, what is this place? How did you come to live here?" Melis smiled, her eyes twinkling with a wisdom that spoke of years lived in harmony with the forest. "This village is called Eldermist," she said. "It is a place of refuge, a sanctuary for those who have been touched by the magic of the forest." "Magic?" Elara asked, her curiosity piqued. Melis nodded. "The forest is alive, Elara. It has a spirit, a consciousness that watches over all who dwell within it. Those who are chosen by the forest are brought here, to Eldermist, where they can live in peace and harmony with nature." Elara's mind raced with questions. Was this why the bear had come to their aid? Was it a guardian of the forest, chosen by its spirit to protect those in need? "And the bear?" Elara asked, her voice trembling with emotion. Was it one of the chosen? Melis's expression softened, her eyes filled with a deep sadness. The bear was more than just a guardian, she said. It was a protector, a being of great power and wisdom. Its spirit lives on in the forest, and in the cubs you now carry. Elara looked down at the cubs, their small bodies warm against her feet. She could feel the weight of Melis's words, the sense of responsibility that came with being chosen by the forest. "But why me?" Elara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why was I chosen?" Melis smiled, her eyes filled with a knowing light. "The forest sees what others cannot," she said. "It sees the strength in your heart, the courage in your soul. You were chosen because you have the power to protect, to heal, to bring balance to the world." Elara felt a surge of emotion, a sense of purpose that she had never known before. She had always been a huntress, a protector of the weak, but this was something more. This was a calling, a destiny that she could not ignore. As the fire crackled in the hearth, Elara felt a sense of peace wash over her. She was safe, for now, and the cubs were safe. But she knew that her journey was far from over. The forest held many secrets, and she had only just begun to uncover them. The days passed in a blur of warmth and comfort. Elara and the cubs were welcomed into the village with open arms, the villagers treating them as if they had always been a part of their community. But despite the kindness of the villagers, Elara couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Eldermist than met the eye. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the village was bathed in the soft glow of twilight, Melis approached Elara with a solemn expression. "There is something you must see," Melis said, her voice filled with a sense of urgency. Elara followed Melis through the village, the cubs trailing behind her. The villagers watched them with curious eyes, their faces filled with a mixture of awe and reverence. Melis led Elara to a small hut at the edge of the village, its walls covered in intricate carvings that seemed to tell a story. Inside, the hut was filled with the scent of herbs and incense, the air thick with the weight of ancient knowledge. In the center of the hut was a stone pedestal, upon which rested a large, leather-bound book. Melis opened the book with reverence, her fingers tracing the pages with a delicate touch. "This is the Book of Eldermist," Melis said, her voice filled with a sense of awe. "It contains the prophecies of the forest, the wisdom of those who came before us." Elara's heart pounded as she looked at the book, its pages filled with symbols and words that seemed to dance before her eyes. She could feel the power emanating from the book, a sense of ancient knowledge that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Melis turned to a page near the middle of the book, her eyes filled with a deep sadness. "This is the prophecy of the Guardian," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "It speaks of a time when the forest will be in great danger, and a protector will rise to save it." Elara's breath caught in her throat as she read the words on the page. The prophecy spoke of a huntress, a woman of great strength and courage, who would be chosen by the forest to protect it from a great evil. It spoke of a bear, a guardian of the forest, who would sacrifice itself to save the huntress and her charges. And it spoke of a final battle, a confrontation with the darkness that threatened to consume the forest. Elara felt a surge of emotion, a sense of destiny that she could not ignore. The prophecy was about her, about the cubs, about the bear that had saved them. It was a call to action, a summons to fulfill her destiny. "But how?" Elara asked, her voice trembling with emotion. "How can I protect the forest? I'm just a huntress." Melis smiled, her eyes filled with a knowing light. "You are more than just a huntress," she said. "You are the chosen one, the protector of the forest. The cubs are your charges, and together you will face the darkness that threatens to consume us all." Elara felt a surge of determination, a sense of purpose that she had never known before. She would protect the forest, no matter what it took. She would fulfill the prophecy, and she would honor the sacrifice of the bear. As she left the hut, the cubs trailing behind her, Elara felt a sense of peace wash over her. She was ready. She would face the darkness, and she would emerge victorious. The days turned into weeks, and Elara settled into life in Eldermist. The villagers taught her the ways of the forest, the secrets of its magic, and the wisdom of its spirit. She learned to communicate with the cubs, to understand their needs and their desires. And she grew stronger, both in body and in spirit. But despite the peace and tranquility of the village, Elara couldn't shake the feeling that a storm was brewing. The forest was restless, the animals uneasy, and the villagers spoke in hushed tones of a darkness that was gathering on the horizon. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the village was bathed in the soft glow of twilight, Elara felt a sense of unease wash over her. She could feel the tension in the air, the sense of impending danger that seemed to hang over the village like a dark cloud. Melis approached her, her expression grave. "The time has come," she said, her voice filled with a sense of urgency. "The darkness is gathering, and the forest needs you." Elara's heart pounded as she looked at Melis, her mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. She knew that the time had come to face the darkness, to fulfill the prophecy and protect the forest. "What must I do?" Elara asked, her voice trembling with emotion. Melis placed a hand on Elara's shoulder, her eyes filled with a deep sadness. "You must journey to the heart of the forest," she said, "to the frozen heart, where the darkness resides. There, you will face the source of the evil, and you will confront it." Elara felt a surge of determination, a sense of purpose that she had never known before. She would journey to the frozen heart, and she would face the darkness. She would protect the forest, no matter what it took. As she prepared for the journey, the villagers gathered around her, their faces filled with a mixture of awe and reverence. They gave her gifts, a cloak made from the fur of a wolf, a bow carved from the wood of an ancient tree, and a necklace made from the teeth of a bear. Elara accepted the gifts with gratitude, her heart swelling with emotion. She knew that the villagers believed in her, that they saw her as the chosen one, the protector of the forest. As she left the village, the cubs trailing behind her, Elara felt a sense of peace wash over her. She was ready. She would face the darkness, and she would emerge victorious. The journey to the frozen heart was long and arduous. The forest grew darker with each step, the trees thicker and more twisted. The air was colder, the wind biting at Elara's skin like 1,000 tiny knives. But she pressed on, her determination unwavering. The cubs followed her, their small bodies trembling with fear. They could sense the danger, the darkness that lurked in the shadows. But they trusted Elara, and they knew that she would protect them. As they ventured deeper into the forest, Elara began to notice strange things. A tree with bark that seemed to pulse with a dark energy, a stream that flowed with water as black as night, a clearing where the snow was stained with blood. And then, as they reached the heart of the forest, they saw it, the frozen heart. It was a place of darkness, a clearing where the trees seemed to part as if by some unseen force. In the center of the clearing was a massive ice formation, its surface smooth and cold to the touch. But what really caught Elara's attention was a figure that stood before it, a figure cloaked in shadows, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Elara's heart pounded as she approached the figure, her bow at the ready. She could feel the darkness emanating from it, the sense of evil that seemed to consume everything in its path. "Who are you?" Elara asked, her voice trembling with emotion. The figure turned to her, its eyes locking onto hers. "I am the darkness," it said, its voice a low, menacing growl. "I am the one who will consume the forest and all who dwell within it." Elara felt a surge of anger, a sense of determination that she had never known before. She would not let the darkness consume the forest. She would protect it, no matter what it took. With a cry of determination, Elara raised her bow and loosed an arrow at the figure. The arrow flew true, striking the figure in the chest. But to Elara's horror, the figure simply laughed, the arrow dissolving into shadows as it struck. "You cannot defeat me," the figure said, its voice filled with a sense of triumph. "I am the darkness, and I am eternal." But Elara was not deterred. She knew that she had to find a way to defeat the darkness, to protect the forest and fulfill the prophecy. As the figure advanced on her, the cubs let out a low growl, their small bodies trembling with fear. But they stood their ground, their eyes filled with a determination that matched Elara's. And then, with a roar that seemed to shake the very heavens, the cubs charged. The cubs moved with a speed and ferocity that belied their size. They lunged at the figure, their small jaws snapping at the shadows that surrounded it. The figure let out a cry of surprise, its form flickering as the cubs attacked. Elara seized the opportunity, her bow singing as she loosed arrow after arrow at the figure. Each arrow struck true, the shadows around the figure dissipating with each hit. But still, the figure remained, its form flickering but not fading. And then, as the cubs continued their attack, Elara noticed something, a faint glow emanating from the ice formation behind the figure. It was a light, pure and bright, that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Elara's heart pounded as she realized what it was. The spirit of the forest, the source of its power. It was the key to defeating the darkness, the key to fulfilling the prophecy. With a cry of determination, Elara charged towards the ice formation, her bow at the ready. The figure turned to her, its eyes filled with a sense of panic. It knew what she was planning, and it knew that it had to stop her. But Elara was too fast. She reached the ice formation and placed her hand on its surface, the light pulsing beneath her fingers. She could feel the power of the forest, the spirit that had chosen her, flowing through her. And then, with a cry of triumph, Elara unleashed the power of the forest. The light exploded from the ice formation, a wave of pure energy that swept through the clearing. The figure let out a cry of agony, its form dissolving into shadows as the light consumed it. The darkness was banished, the forest bathed in the light of the spirit. As the light faded, Elara fell to her knees, her body trembling with exhaustion. The cubs approached her, their small bodies warm against her chest. They had done it. They had defeated the darkness, and they had fulfilled the prophecy. But as Elara looked at the cubs, she knew that their journey was far from over. The forest was safe, for now, but there would always be new threats, new challenges to face. And she would be ready. She was the chosen one, the protector of the forest, and she would protect it, no matter what it took. The forest was silent, the air thick with the weight of what had just transpired. Elara knelt in the snow, her body trembling with exhaustion. The cubs huddled close to her. The light from the ice formation had faded, leaving the clearing bathed in the soft glow of the moon. The darkness was gone, banished by the power of the forest spirit. But the battle had taken its toll. Elara's mind raced as she looked around the clearing. The ice formation was cracked, its surface marred by the explosion of light. The trees surrounding the clearing were scorched, their branches twisted and blackened. But despite the destruction, there was a sense of peace, a feeling that the forest had been cleansed of the darkness that had plagued it. The cubs nuzzled against her, their small bodies warm and reassuring. Elara could feel their gratitude, their trust in her. They had fought alongside her, and together they had triumphed. But as she looked at them, she couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. The bear, their protector, was gone, and she knew that she could never replace it. Melis's words echoed in her mind. Asterisk, the cubs are your charges, and together you will face the darkness that threatens to consume us all. Asterisk, Elara knew that her journey was far from over. The forest was safer now, but there would always be new threats, new challenges to face. And she would be ready. With a deep breath, Elara stood, her legs shaky but determined. She needed to return to Eldermist, to share the news of their victory with the villagers. But more than that, she needed to honor the Bay's sacrifice, to ensure that its legacy lived on. As she made her way back through the forest, the cubs trailing behind her, Elara felt a sense of peace wash over her. The forest was alive, its spirit strong and vibrant. The trees seemed to whisper their gratitude, their branches swaying gently in the breeze. The animals, once silent and fearful, now moved freely, their eyes bright with life. When she reached the village, the villagers greeted her with cheers and tears of joy. They had felt the darkness lift, the forest spirit renewed, and they knew that Elara had fulfilled the prophecy. Melis approached her, her eyes filled with pride and gratitude. "You have done it," Melis said, her voice trembling with emotion. "You have saved the forest, and you have honored the bear's sacrifice." Elara nodded, her heart swelling with emotion. She had done what she had set out to do, but she knew that her journey was far from over. The cubs were her responsibility now, and she would protect them, no matter what. As the villagers celebrated, Elara felt a sense of belonging, a feeling that she had finally found her place in the world. She was no longer just a huntress. She was the protector of the forest, the chosen one. And she would fulfill her destiny, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The days that followed were filled with joy and celebration. The villagers of Eldermis welcomed Elara and the cubs as heroes, their gratitude evident in every smile and gesture. But despite the warmth and kindness of the villagers, Elara couldn't shake the feeling that her journey was far from over. The cubs were growing stronger with each passing day, their small bodies filling out as they feasted on the bounty of the forest. They followed Elara everywhere, their eyes filled with trust and affection. But as she watched them play and explore, Elara couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. They were so young, so innocent, and she knew that they would one day have to face the challenges of the forest on their own. Melis approached her one evening, her expression thoughtful. "The cubs are thriving," she said, her voice soft and reassuring. "But they will need guidance, someone to teach them the ways of the forest." Elara nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of responsibility. She knew that she couldn't stay in Eldermis forever. The forest was vast, and there were other villages, other people who needed her help. But she also knew that she couldn't leave the cubs behind. "What should I do?" Elara asked, her voice trembling with emotion. Melis smiled, her eyes filled with a knowing light. "The forest will guide you," she said. "It always does. Trust in its spirit, and it will show you the way." Elara felt a surge of determination, a sense of purpose that she had never known before. She would protect the cubs, and she would teach them the ways of the forest. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the days turned into weeks, Elara began to train the cubs, teaching them how to hunt, how to navigate the forest, and how to listen to its spirit. They were quick learners, their instincts sharp and their hearts pure. And as she watched them grow, Elara felt a sense of pride, a feeling that she was fulfilling her destiny. But despite the peace and tranquility of Eldermis, Elara couldn't shake the feeling that a storm was brewing. The forest was restless, the animals uneasy, and the villagers spoke in hushed tones of a darkness that was gathering on the horizon. Elara knew that her journey was far from over. The forest would always need a protector, and she would be ready. One morning, as the sun rose over the horizon and the village was bathed in the soft glow of dawn, Elara felt a sense of unease wash over her. The forest was calling to her, its spirit whispering in her ear. It was a call to adventure, a summons to fulfill her destiny. Elara knew that she couldn't ignore the call. The forest needed her, and she would answer. She gathered the cubs, their eyes bright with curiosity as they watched her pack her belongings. The villagers gathered around her, their faces filled with a mixture of sadness and pride. They knew that Elara was destined for greatness, and they knew that she would always be a part of their community. Melis approached her, her eyes filled with a deep sadness. "The forest is vast," she said, her voice trembling with emotion, "and there are many who need your help. But know that you will always have a home here, in Eldermis." Elara nodded, her heart swelling with emotion. She would miss the village, the warmth and kindness of its people. But she knew that her journey was far from over. As she left the village, the cubs trailing behind her, Elara felt a sense of peace wash over her. She was ready. She would face whatever challenges lay ahead, and she would protect the forest, no matter what. The forest was alive, its spirit strong and vibrant. And as Elara ventured deeper into its heart, she knew that she was fulfilling her destiny. The journey through the forest was long and arduous, But Elara and the cubs pressed on, their determination unwavering. They encountered many challenges: rivers swollen with rain, cliffs that seemed impossible to climb, and creatures that lurked in the shadows. But through it all, they remained strong, their bond unbreakable. As they traveled, Elara told the cubs stories of the bear, their protector. She spoke of its courage, its strength, and its sacrifice. The cubs listened intently, their eyes filled with a sense of awe and reverence. They knew that they were part of something greater, a legacy that would live on through them. One evening, as they camped beneath the stars, Elara felt a sense of peace wash over her. The forest was quiet, the only sound the gentle rustling of leaves in the breeze. The cubs were curled up beside her, their small bodies warm and reassuring. As she looked up at the stars, Elara felt a surge of emotion, a sense of purpose that she had never known before. She was the protector of the forest, the chosen one, and she would fulfill her destiny, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The cubs were her legacy, the living embodiment of the bear's sacrifice. And together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The journey led Elara and the cubs to a place of great beauty, a clearing where the trees seemed to part as if by some unseen force. In the center of the clearing was a massive oak tree, its branches reaching towards the heavens. The air was filled with the scent of flowers, and the ground was soft beneath their feet. Elara knew that this was a place of power, a place where the spirit of the forest was strongest. She approached the oak tree, her heart pounding with a sense of awe and reverence. As she placed her hand on the tree's trunk, she felt a surge of energy, a sense of connection to the forest spirit. The cubs approached her, their eyes filled with a sense of wonder. And then, as if in answer to her thoughts, the spirit of the bear appeared before her, its form shimmering in the moonlight. It was a majestic sight, its fur glowing with an otherworldly light. "You have done well," the bear said, its voice deep and resonant. "You have protected the forest, and you have honored my sacrifice. But your journey is far from over." Elara nodded, her heart swelling with emotion. She knew that the forest would always need a protector, and she would be ready. The bear's spirit faded, but its presence remained, a sense of peace and reassurance that filled the clearing. The cubs nuzzled against her, their small bodies warm and reassuring. As Elara looked up at the stars, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. She was the eternal guardian, the protector of the forest, and she would fulfill her destiny, no matter what challenges lay ahead. Thank you for joining Elara and the cubs on their incredible journey through the frozen forest. If you were captivated by their story of courage, sacrifice, and destiny, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more epic tales like this one. Let us know in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Elara's place? Would you have taken on the responsibility of protecting the forest and the cubs? We'd love to hear your thoughts and theories. Stay tuned for more adventures, and remember, every forest has its secrets, and every hero has a story. Until next time, keep exploring and keep believing in the magic of the wild. Evergreen sparkles.